Hello there. Today I'm going to introduce you to Kung Fu Girl. Kung Fu Girl is a Riesling. It's a Riesling. This is the 2021 vintage of that. It's from the Columbia Valley and it's made by Charles Smith Wines. Charles Smith himself started his career actually as a manager and promoter for rock bands. I believe much of that was in Denmark, where he'd grown up. But in 1999 he visited the Walla Walla region in Washington State. Clearly he loved the place and found a lot there that interested him, because in 2001 he released his first vintage from there. In its first decade the winery gained much critical acclaim. I think largely because of its quite astute marketing and support of that marketing with what are recognisable quality wines, and Kung Fu Girl is a fantastic example of that. The wine comes from cool sites in the Columbia Valley. And actually, over the last 22 years, Charles Smith Wines has grown to become one of the larger wineries there. Not as big as Chateau Saint-Michel or Precept, but a significant winery in the Washington State context of wineries anyway. This wine is only labelled as a Washington State wine, but the fruit from it comes from the Columbia Valley. Within that, Charles Smith have vineyards in a number of AVAs, ranging from Waluki Slope, Walla Walla Valley, Snipes Mountain and Yakima Valley. But this is not a wine that is trying to be a single vineyard or to reflect terroir. It's trying to be a popular brand. Smith says that he thought of the brand at night while watching a kung fu movie and eating Chinese food, and he wanted a wine that would go with that Chinese food. So that's what he's created, and actually I think there's some quite clever winemaking going on there. And the brand has clearly been successful, because in 2016 Constellation, the large wine group, bought 5 brands from Smith, and the idea was that they would do the sales and marketing and he would stay on as the winemaker. Obviously Constellation changed their strategy, because in 2022 they sold Charles Smith Wines onto the Wine Group, another large American wine group. But nonetheless, I think a popular brand, and one that has been thoughtfully produced. Actually, it turns out, although it's labelled as a Riesling, you're allowed to do this in the United States, there's 5% of Chardonnay in here, and that just sort of fills the wine out a little. Also, I think the fact that they've retained a little bit of sweetness. This has 12 grams per litre of sugar in it. So it's not a particularly sweet wine, but it's certainly off-dry. And I think that style works to balance the acidity really quite nicely, and makes it an enjoyable wine to accompany Oriental style foods. Also, to give the wine a bit more roundness and to stop it from being too sharp because of its high acidity, the wine's been aged with its lees in oak barrels for a short period of time. It's not a particularly normal New World way of handling Riesling, but it's one that I think works quite well in this situation. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? I mean, firstly, that's got a medium yellow colour. There aren't really hints of green. Often Riesling can be sort of thin and pale, but this seems to have a little bit of colour there. It's not particularly throwing tears in the glass. That doesn't surprise me. It's only 12.5% alcohol and not particularly sweet. I mean, it's not a fully sweet wine by any means. The aromas have notes of lime to begin with, but also sort of touches of apple, and there are toasty fermentation notes there, almost giving a sort of a slightly sherbety note. There's something high-toned and perfumed. Maybe it's that combination of the fermentation aromas and sort of more high-toned lime blossom perfumes or something like that. But the aroma's appealing, so let's have a taste. Tasting that, there's a very clear sweetness, but a very obvious balancing citric freshness, sort of taut lime, lemon. Not necessarily steely. It's because there's a little bit of weight and roundness to the fruit, and I think that's where the lees aging and the small portion of Chardonnay are coming in. There's a little bit of sort of tropical fruit, stone fruit, so a little bit of peachiness just coming in just to round the wine out a bit. It gives an appealing, juicy, rounded finish that just fills Riesling out quite a bit and stops it from being too linear. If you like a wine with a touch of sweetness, I think this is well worth considering. Be careful though, because I've seen different sugar levels from vintage to vintage for this wine, so I think it does depend as to how much acidity the wine has, as to how much sugar is left in to balance it, and therefore the sweetness may vary occasionally, but the balance should always be there. The sugar is balancing the acidity, if that makes any sense. The flavours are lasting really quite nicely, but I mean, this is not a special wine. It's not a wine to spend a long time in the cellar. I'm sure it would be fine for a couple of years, but it's a wine for opening, drinking straight away, probably with a Chinese meal and maybe while watching a kung fu movie. Thanks so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please do like and share. Do leave your comments. We'd love to hear what you think about the wine, the tasting, kung fu movies. It'd be great to hear from you. Do please consider following us on YouTube. Most importantly, do try and make sure you join us again for another tasting really soon.